My beloved child, pause right here. What you are hearing is not random, and this moment is not accidental. On this exact day, heaven marked your name. La tomorrow. Not someday. Today. Archangel Michael was instructed by God himself to deliver a message that carries urgency, authority, and consequence. If your heart feels a sudden pull, if something inside you whispered, "I need to hear this," that is because this message was sealed with your name on it. Listen carefully. There is a spiritual timer running, and most people will scroll past without realizing what they almost lost. The warning is not meant to frighten you, but to wake you up. Because what God prepared for you is real, but it is also conditional. Heaven does not force blessings on distracted hearts. Archangel Michael stands as the defender, the enforcer of divine timing. And today, he steps forward with a message that carries both promise and correction. God says, "I placed a blessing within your reach, but you hesitated. You questioned. You delayed. This is not condemnation. This is revelation. There was a door open for you recently, quietly, subtly. It did not look dramatic. It may have appeared ordinary, even inconvenient. And because it did not look like what you expected, you almost dismissed it. A door was connected to provision, protection, and elevation. Heaven noticed your pause. Archangel Michael reveals that this blessing was not just for comfort, but for assignment. What God intended to place in your hands was meant to move others, to shift your family line, to break a repeating cycle. But blessings tied to purpose require attention and obedience. They are not automatic. Hear this clearly. God is not revoking out of anger. He is responding to alignment. When alignment drifts, timing becomes fragile. This is why this message feels intense. It is not because you are in danger, but because you are on the edge of missing what you prayed for. There is a reason this message reached you before the timer ran out. Archangel Michael does not arrive late. He arrives when decisions still matter. And right now, heaven is asking a simple but weighty question. Will you choose awareness over distraction? You may have felt spiritually tired lately. Not faithless, just worn down. Carrying responsibility. Carrying silence. Carrying unanswered questions. God says he saw that weight. But he also saw something else. You started normalizing delay. You told yourself, "I'll get to it later." Later became dangerous. This message is a mercy interruption. Archangel Michael speaks of a moment coming very soon, sooner than you think, where clarity will confront you. A conversation, a document, an opportunity, and truth exposed. When that moment arrives, there will be no neutral ground. You will either step forward or step away, and heaven will record that response. Do not misunderstand this warning. Your blessing is not fragile because God is weak. It is fragile because free will is powerful. God honors your choices, even when they cost you. That is why this message exists, to give you the chance to choose again, consciously, intentionally. There is also something being revealed about your environment. The house you are connected to, physically or spiritually, has been under evaluation. Not to punish, but to protect. God has been shielding you from something you could not yet see. A hidden intention. A quiet manipulation. A delayed truth. Archangel Michael says exposure is near, and when it happens, things will suddenly make sense. This is why scrolling past would have consequences. Not because this video itself holds power, but because ignoring divine prompts hardens perception. Each ignored nudge makes the next one quieter. God does not shout forever. Right now, heaven is leaning in. If you feel resistance rising, that is not a sign to leave. It is a sign that something is being confronted. Old patterns, old fears, old excuses. God says, I am not asking for perfection. I am asking for presence. Archangel Michael declares that the next phase of your life requires decisiveness. No more half-yes. No more delayed obedience. No more waiting for conditions to feel perfect. The blessing attached to your name requires movement. And here is the reassurance you need. If you respond, even now, the blessing is not lost. The timer exists because timing matters, but mercy still speaks. God would not send this message if restoration was impossible. Take this moment seriously. Still your mind. Let your spirit listen. Something is shifting already. You may feel it as heaviness lifting, or as conviction settling in. Both are signs of divine attention. This is only the beginning of what Archangel Michael was commanded to reveal today. What comes next explains why this moment matters so deeply, and what action reconnects you to what heaven prepared. Stay attentive. This is where things start to unfold. Beloved one, as this message continues, understand that heaven is not repeating itself without reason. Archangel Michael presses closer now, because what was hinted at before must be understood clearly. God says this is not just about a blessing you want, but about a calling you have been postponing. You have asked God for signs, and today He answers with clarity. This exact day was chosen because your spirit is finally ready to hear what your mind kept avoiding. Archangel Michael reveals that the blessing connected to your name carries responsibility. It is not small, and it is not private. You were never meant to only survive. You were marked to influence, to protect, to stand in gaps others could not see. This is why resistance appeared whenever you tried to move forward. It was not coincidence. It was opposition reacting to your potential. God says you have been standing at the edge of obedience, taking one step forward and 2 steps back. Not because you do not love Him, but because fear disguised itself as wisdom. You told yourself you were being cautious. Heaven calls it hesitation. And hesitation, when prolonged, begins to speak louder than faith. Archangel Michael shows that recently you felt an inner push to change something. A habit, a relationship dynamic, a daily routine, a spiritual discipline. You knew what it was, yet you delay. God says that delay slowed the flow, not because He withdrew, but because alignment shifted. Blessings move smoothly where obedience creates space. Hear this gently but firmly. God is not threatening you. He's warning you because He values you. The revoking mentioned in this message is not permanent loss. It is the risk of missing a window. Windows close not because God stops loving, but because seasons change. There is also something deeply personal being addressed now. Archangel Michael says you have been carrying guilt for not doing enough for God. You compare yourself to others and feel behind. God says comparison has been draining your joy and weakening your confidence. He never asked you to copy someone else's walk. He asked you to answer when He called you. This is why this message feels intense yet intimate. It is calibrated to your spiritual frequency. God is restoring your sensitivity so you can recognize His voice again without second guessing. The blessing you seek requires you to trust that voice even when logic hesitates. Now listen carefully. Archangel Michael reveals that what is coming next in your life will require public courage. You will be seen more than before, heard more than before, evaluated more than before. This exposure is not punishment, it is positioning. But exposure without preparation becomes overwhelming. That is why God is correcting alignment now. If this message is stirring something in you, do not keep it to yourself. When you engage, you reinforce your yes. Take a moment to like this video so the message can reach others who are standing at the same crossroads. Share it with someone who has been spiritually tired but still hungry for truth. Leave a comment declaring that you are choosing awareness over distraction. And if this channel has been feeding your spirit, subscribe and stay connected, because what is coming next will build on what God is doing right now. When you support the flow, you stay in the flow. Archangel Michael also speaks of protection being restored. There was a covering you felt before that seemed lighter recently. God says that covering strengthens again when alignment returns. Prayer will feel less forced. Peace will return in moments where anxiety tried to dominate. This is not emotional imagination. It is spiritual recalibration. You must understand this. Heaven responds to movement. Even a small step of obedience releases confirmation. God is watching for your response, not to judge you, but to partner with you. He does not require perfection, but He does require participation. Very soon, you will notice repeated confirmations. The same message appearing in different forms. The same instruction echoing through different voices. That repetition is not coincidence. It is God saying, I am still here, and this still matters. Do not let familiarity make you casual. Sacred moments often arrive quietly. If you sense conviction right now, let it lead you to action, not to shame. Shame paralyzes. Conviction mobilizes. Before this message continues further, stay fully present. What is about to unfold will connect the warning to a promise in a way you may not expect. Hold on, because the next revelation brings understanding that many never reach, and you will want to witness how this unfolds. Chosen one, lean in now, because the atmosphere shifts at this point. What Archangel Michael reveals next is not surface-level truth. It is a disclosure from the inner courts of heaven. God says that long before this exact day arrived, your name was already written into a sequence. Certain moments were pre-approved for you. Certain encounters were scheduled. Certain blessings were timed. You did not imagine the delays, and you did not misread the resistance. You were moving through a contested zone. Archangel Michael explains that the warning in this message exists because you were approaching a critical overlap between divine timing and human response. Heaven had aligned resources, favor, and protection, but there was one remaining factor: your agreement. Not just belief, but agreement expressed through action. God honors faith, but He releases fullness through obedience. There is something important you must understand now. The blessing attached to your name is not just material or emotional. It is revelatory. It changes how you see, how you discern, how you respond. This is why the enemy worked subtly, not loudly. Distraction was more effective than opposition. Weariness was more effective than temptation. And normalizing delay was more effective than open rebellion. God says you were never meant to rush, but you were never meant to stall either. There is a holy pace, and you drifted slightly behind it. A drift did not disqualify you, but it did create urgency. This message is heaven's way of realigning your steps before momentum is lost. Archangel Michael now speaks about restoration. He says, what was threatened is not yet removed. The revoking mentioned earlier was a warning, not a verdict. Heaven always warns before it withdraws. That alone proves God's intention to keep you within His plan. If He wanted to remove the blessing, He would have remained silent. You may be wondering why this feels emotional, even heavy. That is because something old is being shed. A version of you that survived but never fully stepped forward is being confronted. God says the next season requires boldness that feels unfamiliar to you. Not arrogance, but holy confidence. Confidence rooted in obedience, not approval. There is also a family line aspect to this blessing. What God wants to release through you corrects something that has been repeating for generations. Patterns of delay, missed opportunities, quiet regret. You are positioned as an interruption to that cycle. This is why pressure intensified as you got closer to alignment. Archangel Michael says that after this message, you will notice an inner urgency that does not feel like anxiety. It will feel cleared, steady, and focused. That is not stress. That is readiness. When that readiness comes, respond quickly. Do not overanalyze. Do not seek 10 confirmations. Move. Now receive this reassurance. God is not measuring you against others. He is measuring you against obedience. You are not behind. You are on the brink. This message marks a pivot point. As this part concludes, heaven releases a spiritual seal. This is a moment of agreement between you and God. If this message resonates with your spirit, respond outwardly as an inward declaration. Type "I receive the warning" and the promise in the comments if this is speaking directly to you. Blessing code 3141 has now been released. There are people God is trying to reach through this word. Souls standing at the same edge you stood on. When this message moves, light moves. When it spreads, clarity spreads. I hear the Lord say, those who help carry this word will share in its harvest. This is not about supporting a channel. This is about fueling an assignment. First, know this. Every seed you release into this mission becomes a voice for someone else's awakening. Scripture declares that when seed is sown into good ground, the harvest does not return empty. God is speaking that promise directly to you now. He says, as you pour oil into this work, I will keep oil flowing in your life. Here is the first person invitation. I am asking you to partner with this word, not later, but now. The same urgency you felt in the message applies here. This is a prophetic moment of response. If this message protected you, warned you, or realigned you, then act in alignment. Release a super thanks. Join the channel membership, or sow through PayPal using the link in the description. Do it as an act of obedience, not generosity. Heaven recognizes obedient seeds. God says those who support this mission will not lack clarity in the coming season. He will guard your timing, sharpen your discernment, and accelerate delayed answers. This is not a suggestion. This is a command wrapped in promise. Now remain still, because what comes next will reveal how this obedience unfolds in your everyday life, and why heaven is watching your next move so closely. Beloved child, as this message unfolds further, the tone shifts from warning into instruction. Archangel Michael now steps forward not as a herald of urgency, but as a guide of precision. God says the alert has already been delivered. Now comes understanding. What you do next will determine how quickly what was delayed begins to move again. There is a truth you must grasp deeply. Blessings do not vanish suddenly. They drift when attention drifts. What God prepared for you did not disappear overnight. It slowed, waiting for your awareness to catch up with heaven's pace. This is why this message reached you when it did. You were close enough to feel the tension, but still within reach of correction. Archangel Michael reveals that the next phase of your life requires clarity in 3 areas: what you tolerate, what you prioritize, and what you obey immediately. These areas shape spiritual momentum. God says you have been generous with your energy in places that cannot carry you forward. You gave time to voices that diluted your conviction. You allowed comfort to negotiate with calling. This is not accusation. This is diagnosis. God says the reason exhaustion followed you even when you rested is because your spirit was carrying misalignment. Rest does not restore what obedience alone can realign. When you step back into order, strength returns without striving. Archangel Michael speaks now about discernment. You have it, but you doubted it. You sensed when something was off, but you asked others to confirm what God had already shown you. Heaven says that season of overchecking is ending. You are being trained to trust the first clear instruction, not the fifth opinion. There is also a matter of speech. God says some of your words have been canceling your prayers. You asked for increase but spoke limitation. You asked for clarity but confessed confusion. This was not rebellion. It was habit. From this moment, be intentional. Speak in agreement with what God has already declared, not with what you fear. Archangel Michael shows that when you begin to speak differently, resistance will surface briefly. Do not retreat. Resistance often appears right before momentum shifts. The enemy does not fight what is already stagnant. Another truth is revealed here. The blessing connected to your name is not isolated to one area. When it activates, it touches finances, relationships, direction, and peace almost simultaneously. That is why heaven guards its release carefully. God does not pour fullness into fractured focus. You may notice in the coming days that certain distractions lose their appeal. Conversations that once held your attention may feel empty. This is not isolation. It is refinement. God is narrowing your focus so acceleration can occur. Archangel Michael now speaks about time. He says, "Ready what remains." This does not mean rushing or panicking. It means responding promptly when instruction comes. Delayed obedience weakens impact. Immediate obedience multiplies it. There will be a moment soon when you feel a clear nudge to act. It may be simple. Send a message. End a pattern. Begin a habit. Say yes where you usually hesitate. That moment is your checkpoint. Heaven will watch your response closely, not to trap you, but to partner with you. Understand this clearly. God has already forgiven the delay. What He waits for now is movement. Grace covers the past. Obedience shapes the future. Archangel Michael also reveals that protection increases as alignment increases. Some things you feared losing will no longer have power over you. Fear loses leverage when obedience takes the lead. You are not being rushed into chaos. You are being guided into order. Order produces peace, even when change is required. As this message settles, allow conviction to become clarity, not pressure. Pressure overwhelms. Clarity empowers. God is empowering you now. What is ahead will make sense only if you stay attentive. What unfolds next will explain how heaven responds when alignment is restored, and why your response from this point forward carries unusual weight. Stay open, because the message continues to deepen. My dear one, what unfolds now is a turning inward. Archangel Michael does not speak loudly here. He speaks precisely. God says the external signs you have been watching for will only make sense after an internal adjustment is completed. This part of the message is about posture, not position. About readiness, not speed. There is a subtle truth being revealed. You have been asking God to move circumstances, but heaven has been waiting for you to move your posture. Not your location, not your role, but the way you approach instruction. God says there were moments when He spoke clearly, yet you treated His word as an option instead of an order. This was not defiance, it was familiarity. Familiarity dulls urgency. Archangel Michael explains that familiarity with God's voice can become dangerous when reverence fades. When instruction feels common, obedience becomes negotiable. Heaven is restoring reverence in you, not through fear, but through clarity. You are being reminded that when God speaks, timing is embedded in His words. There is also something being healed now. You have carried disappointment from past obedience that did not seem to produce immediate fruit. You obeyed before, and results took time. That memory made you cautious. God says He saw that wound. But He also says this season is not the same as that one. The soil is different now. You are different now. Archangel Michael reveals that the reason this blessing feels weighty is because it carries permanence. It is not a temporary lift. It is a lasting shift. That is why preparation feels intense. God prepares deeply for what He intends to sustain. Pay attention to this next insight. God says some of the delay was not spiritual resistance, but emotional entanglement. You stayed connected to situations God had already resolved. You kept revisiting what was finite. That backward glance slowed forward movement. From this point on, closure must be honored. You may feel a quiet separation happening. Less emotional reaction. Less need for explanation. This is maturity, not coldness. God is teaching you to move without dragging old weight into new territory. Archangel Michael also addresses your prayer life. You have been faithful but repetitive, asking the same things without adjusting your posture. God says prayer is shifting from request to alignment. Instead of asking Him to bless your plans, you will begin asking Him to reveal His order. That shift unlocks speed. There's a new authority being formed in you. Not dominance, but confidence rooted in obedience. When you know you are aligned, you stop asking for permission to obey God. You move. God says that after this alignment, you will experience fewer internal arguments, less overthinking, less spiritual negotiation. Peace will become your confirmation. Another layer is revealed now. The blessing tied to your name carries visibility. This is why God has been dealing with your integrity privately. Public favor requires private order. Heaven always corrects in secret before it promotes in public. Archangel Michael says, do not fear being seen. Fear being misaligned. Visibility without alignment brings pressure. Alignment invites grace. You may notice that some people begin to misunderstand you. That is a sign of transition. When you shift internally, external relationships recalibrate. Do not chase understanding. Stay obedient. God also says that generosity will play a role in this season. Not just financially, but with forgiveness, patience, and truth. You cannot carry fullness while holding offense. Release what you have been justified in holding. Obedience includes letting go. This is the part where many hesitate. Letting go feels like loss. God says it is exchange. You release weight, and He releases clarity. Archangel Michael reminds you that heaven measures success differently. Not by speed, but by alignment. Not by applause, but by obedience. When you align, heaven accelerates without striving. As this message continues, something is settling in you. A quiet resolve. A readiness that does not need noise. It is the posture heaven hath been waiting for. What comes next will reveal how this internal shift begins to manifest externally, and how God confirms alignment through unexpected evidence. Stay attentive. The unfolding is intentional, and your awareness matters now more than ever. Beloved one, as this message moves forward, Archangel Michael shifts from preparation into activation. God says the internal realignment you have been experiencing is not meant to stay hidden for long. What changes within you will soon begin to show in your decisions, your boundaries, and your confidence. This is the stage where obedience becomes visible. There is something important being clarified now. Alignment is not passive. It is not simply agreeing in your heart. It is expressed through consistent action. God says you are entering a phase where small decisions carry large consequences. Not consequences of punishment, but a momentum. One obedient choice will unlock a chain reaction of confirmations. Archangel Michael reveals that the reason heaven emphasized timing earlier is because this next stretch requires decisiveness. You will not always feel emotionally ready, but you will feel spiritually clear. Learn to move with clarity rather than waiting for comfort. Comfort delays. Clarity accelerates. God speaks directly to your hesitation. He says you have been afraid of making the wrong move, so you made no move. That season ends now. Heaven prefers a corrected step over a stagnant one. When you move in obedience, God adjusts you mid-step if needed. He cannot adjust what never moves. There is also a word here about courage. Courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means obedience in its presence. You will feel moments of uncertainty, but they will no longer control you. Archangel Michael says your confidence will come from knowing that God ordered the step, not from knowing the outcome. Pay attention to your surroundings in the coming days. God says He will confirm alignment through peace where there used to be tension, and through clarity where there used to be confusion. These confirmations may seem subtle, but they are deliberate. Do not overlook them. Another truth is revealed now. Some doors may close as others prepare to open. Do not mourn doors God shuts. He closes what cannot sustain you in the next season. Resistance to closure delays access to expansion. Archangel Michael speaks about obedience that feels inconvenient. There will be moments when doing the right thing costs you comfort, approval, or familiarity. God says choose obedience anyway. What you lose temporarily cannot compare to what obedience secures permanently. There is also a warning wrapped in wisdom here. Do not announce every move. Not everyone needs to know what God told you. Some instructions are meant to be protected until they mature. Silence can be obedience too. God is also sharpening your discernment about people. You will sense who can walk with you into the next season and who cannot. This is not rejection. It is recognition. Do not force alignment where God has signaled separation. As this message deepens, understand that engagement matters. When you actively participate, you reinforce alignment. If this word is speaking to you, respond outwardly. Like this video so it reaches others who are standing where you stood. Share it with someone who needs clarity more than comfort. Leave a comment declaring that you are choosing obedience over delay. Subscribe to this channel if these messages are strengthening your walk, because consistency in truth builds consistency in faith. When you engage, you position yourself to receive what follows. Archangel Michael also brings reassurance. You are not late. You are not behind. You are right where correction met willingness. Heaven values that more than perfect timing. God says your yes now carries weight. There will be a moment soon where you look back and realize how close you were to missing this shift. Not with fear, but with gratitude. Gratitude that God interrupted you in time. Do not let familiarity with this message dull its urgency. What you are hearing is not general encouragement. It is personal instruction. Treat it accordingly. As this section comes to a close, remain attentive. What is about to be revealed next connects obedience to reward in a way that will strengthen your resolve. Hold on, because this next insight brings clarity many wait years to understand, and you will want to receive it fully. My beloved one, as this message carries on, Archangel Michael now unveils the principle that governs what happens after obedience begins. God says many understand how to obey once, but few understand how to remain aligned after the first step. This part is about sustaining what God activates, so that nothing leaks, fades, or reverses. There is a quiet danger after initial obedience, relaxation. You feel relief, momentum begins, and you assume the work is finished. God says alignment is not a moment, it is a posture you maintain. What He is about to release into your life requires consistency, not intensity. Intensity ignites. Consistency sustained. Archangel Michael reveals that some people lose blessings not because they disobeyed, but because they became careless after obedience. They return to old patterns of thought, old speech, old tolerances. God is protecting you from that mistake by teaching you how to guard what He gives. You must understand this truth deeply. Blessings are attracted to order, but they remain where order is maintained. God says the next season of your life will test not your faith, but your discipline. Not harsh discipline, but holy order. How you manage your time, your words, your focus, and your spiritual intake will matter more than ever before. There is also something being addressed about emotional stewardship. You feel deeply. That is a gift. But God says emotions must now serve discernment, not override it. You are learning to feel without being led by feeling. That maturity keeps you steady when circumstances fluctuate. Archangel Michael speaks now about spiritual atmosphere. You will notice that certain environments drain you faster than before. That is not weakness, it is sensitivity increasing. God says you can no longer stay long in places that disrupt your alignment. Protecting your atmosphere protects your assignment. This includes what you listen to, what you watch, and what you repeatedly entertain in your thoughts. Alignment is reinforced by exposure. What you expose yourself to daily either strengthens or weakens spiritual momentum. God is also teaching you restraint. Not everything that can be addressed needs to be confronted. Not every battle is yours. Discernment now includes knowing when to speak and when to stay silent. Archangel Michael says silence, when God instructs it, is not avoidance, it is authority. Another layer unfolds here. God says you will soon experience moments of acceleration. Things will move faster than before. Decisions will stack quickly. Opportunities will present closely together. This speed is a sign of alignment, but it also requires wisdom. Do not say yes to everything that looks good. Say yes to what stays aligned. There is a subtle temptation that comes with progress. Overextension. God warns against it gently. Overextension feels productive, but it fractures focus. Heaven blesses focused obedience more than scattered effort. Archangel Michael also reveals that the enemy's strategy changes while alignment is restored. Instead of distraction, he tries to hurry you, to rush you into decisions without prayer, to pressure you into commitments God did not assign. Do not confuse urgency with obedience. God's urgency comes with peace. Pressure comes with anxiety. Pay attention to how decisions feel in your spirit. Alignment feels steady, even when it stretches you. Misalignment feels rushed, even when it excites you. God is also building endurance in you. Not endurance to survive hardship, but endurance to carry blessing. Many can endure lack. Few can endure abundance without drifting. God trusts you with more because He is training you to remain anchored. You may notice that your prayers change. Less desperation, more clarity. Less asking for rescue, more asking for instruction. This is growth. Do not miss it. Archangel Michael reassures you here. You are not walking alone. Heaven is actively involved in this transition. Angels are assigned to reinforce what God has spoken. You are supported in ways you cannot see. As this message continues, let it settle deeply. Do not rush past it mentally. Allow it to recalibrate how you think about progress, blessing, and obedience. What comes next will reveal how God confirms sustained alignment through tangible outcomes and why patience now protects what is about to manifest. Remain attentive. This unfolding is deliberate, and heaven is still speaking directly to you. Beloved child, the message deepens now, and Archangel Michael speaks with a firmness wrapped in compassion. God says this is the point where alignment becomes evidence. Up until now, much had been happening within you, unseen and uncelebrated. But heaven never works internally without intending external confirmation. What God is about to do will validate the obedience you chose when no one was watching. There is a principle being revealed here. God confirms alignment in layers. First through peace, then through clarity, and finally through manifestation. You have already tasted peace. You have begun to walk in clarity. Manifestation is next, but it will not arrive the way you once imagined. God says if it came exactly as you expected, you would mistake it for coincidence. Instead, He will reveal Himself unmistakably. Archangel Michael shows that one of the confirmations will come through reversal. Something that once resisted you will suddenly cooperate. A closed path will open without struggle. A delay will resolve itself quickly. This is not luck. It is alignment producing evidence. Another confirmation will come through exposure. Truth that was hidden will surface naturally, without you forcing it. God says you do not need to defend yourself or explain what happened. Light will speak for you. Archangel Michael stands as the enforcer of divine truth, and when exposure comes under his watch, it brings protection, not shame. There is also a financial aspect tied to this season. Not excess, but stability and provision that removes pressure. God says He is not just meeting needs. He is removing survival mode. Survival mode kept you reactive. Provision will allow you to be responsive and intentional. Pay attention to how your decisions change once pressure lifts. God says many people mistake stress for motivation. When stress lifts, clarity takes its place. That clarity will guide you into wiser stewardship, not impulsive action. Archangel Michael also reveals that relationships will recalibrate. Some will grow stronger, others will quietly fade. This is not loss, it is alignment. God removes relational friction that distracts from purpose. You not chase what exits peacefully. There is a warning here as well, and it is gentle but firm. When confirmation begins, guard against pride. Pride does not always sound arrogant. Sometimes it sounds like self-sufficiency. God says, remember who ordered the steps when results appear. Gratitude keeps alignment intact. Another truth unfolds now. God says obedience is no longer optional for you because influence is increasing. Your choices will begin to affect others more directly. People will watch how you respond, not just what you say. This is not pressure, it is trust. Heaven does not entrust influence lightly. Archangel Michael reassures you that you will not be overwhelmed. Grace will rise with responsibility. Strength will meet demand. You will not have to strain to maintain what God gives. Alignment removes strain. As this part comes to its sealing moment, heaven invites your agreement again. This is not repetition. It is reinforcement. If this message has aligned you, corrected you, and awakened you, mark this moment. Type I stay in alignment in the comments if your spirit receives this word. Blessing code 8286 has now been activated over you. God is reaching people through this word who would never step into a church, never open a Bible, never hear truth unless it meets them where they are. When this message moves, light moves. When this channel reaches further, awareness reaches further. Heaven measures impact in souls, not numbers. I hear the Lord say, those who help carry this warning will share in its reward. This is not about helping a creator. It is about fueling a river. Scripture says that those who water others will themselves be watered. God is speaking that promise to you personally right now. Here is the first person call. I am asking you to respond to this moment, not later. The urgency you felt earlier applies here as well. This is a prophetic act, not a donation. If this message realigned you, protected you, or opened your eyes, then sow into this assignment. Release a super thanks, become a channel member, or give through PayPal using the link in the description. When you give into God's work, you are not losing, you are positioning. God declares that those who support this mission will not miss their next divine appointment. He will sharpen your timing, guard your steps, and multiply what you place in His hands. This is a blessing spoken, not a suggestion made. Obey the nudge. Act now. Heaven is watching response, and alignment is still being rewarded. Beloved one, as this message continues, Archangel Michael now draws your attention to what happens after confirmation appears. God says many people misinterpret confirmation as completion, but in truth, confirmation is invitation. It invites you to walk deeper, steadier, and more intentionally than before. What has begun to show externally is meant to shape how you live daily, not just how you feel momentarily. There is a refining taking place now, not because something is wrong, but because something precious is being protected. God says when He confirms alignment, He also sharpens discernment so you do not waste momentum. Momentum is powerful, but unmanaged momentum can drift. Heaven is teaching you how to steward progress. Archangel Michael reveals that your schedule will begin to matter more. Not in a legalistic way, but in a purposeful way. God says what you make time for reveals what you value. Alignment is reinforced by intentional time with God, not rushed moments squeezed between distractions. Depth now matters more than frequency. Another layer of wisdom unfolds here. God says you must learn to say no without explanation. Some opportunities will appear good, even helpful, but they will pull you sideways instead of forward. Obedience in this season includes restraint. You do not need to justify your alignment to anyone. There is also a call to simplicity. God says complexity hath been draining you. Too many voices, too many options, too many inputs. Alignment simplifies. It narrows focus so strength can concentrate. When God simplifies, He is not limiting you. He is strengthening you. Archangel Michael speaks now about emotional memory. You may feel tempted to revisit past failures to ensure you do not repeat them. God says learn from the past, but do not relive it. Replaying old mistakes dulls present confidence. Confidence is required to steward what is coming. There is also an adjustment in how you pray. God says move from asking Him to fix things to asking Him to order things. Fixing addresses symptoms. Ordering addresses structure. When structure aligns, symptoms resolve naturally. Another important truth is revealed. God says some people around you will not understand your new boundaries. They may call it distance, pride, or change. Do not internalize their confusion. Obedience often looks like distance to those who benefited from your misalignment. Archangel Michael reassures you that you are not becoming unreachable. You are becoming unavailable to disorder. That distinction matters. There will also be moments of quiet testing. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious. Just small decisions that reveal whether alignment is being maintained. God says these tests are not traps. They are checkpoints. Each time you choose alignment, confidence increases. Pay attention to your inner dialogue. God says replace self-questioning with God-referencing. Instead of asking, what if this fails? Begin asking, what did God instruct? That shift anchors you. Another confirmation will come through peace during uncertainty. You may not always know what is next, but you will know you are held. That assurance is alignment. Archangel Michael also speaks about humility. Humility does not mean shrinking. It means staying teachable. God says even as influence grows, remain open to correction. Correction keeps you safe. You may notice that certain prayers begin to answer themselves. Decisions become obvious. Paths clarify without effort. This is not because life is easy. It is because alignment removes unnecessary friction. As this message continues to build, let gratitude remain active in you. Gratitude protects blessing from entitlement. Each time you acknowledge God's hand, alignment deepens. What comes next will address a final area that determines whether alignment endures long-term. This next revelation is subtle but powerful, and it will prepare you for the final sealing of this message. Stay present. Heaven is still speaking, and your attention still matters. My beloved child, this part arrives with intentional weight, because Archangel Michael now addresses the final guardrail that keeps alignment from collapsing over time. God says many people receive blessings, confirmations, and even influence, but they lose momentum because they neglect one crucial discipline: consistent remembrance. What you remember shapes how you respond. There is a subtle danger when things begin to work again. You forget how close you were to delay. You forget the warning. You forget the moment God interrupted you. And when memory fades, urgency fades with it. God says this part of the message exists so you never forget why alignment matters. Archangel Michael reveals that remembrance is not nostalgia. It is protection. When you remember what disobedience cost, obedience stays precious. When you remember how God corrected you, humility stays alive. Heaven does not want you fearful of loss, but mindful of stewardship. God says you are entering a season where results will tempt you to relax spiritually. Not to sin, but to coast. Coasting is dangerous because it replaces dependence with habit. Habit without dependence leads to drift. Drift is always subtle before it is costly. This is why God is calling you into daily awareness, not daily intensity. Awareness keeps you alert without exhausting you. It keeps you responsive instead of reactive. Archangel Michael now speaks about spiritual companionship. God says alignment is easier to maintain when you remain connected to truth consistently. Isolation weakens discernment over time. You were not designed to carry revelation alone. You were designed to stay connected to reminders. This is where engagement matters again, not for numbers, but for reinforcement. When you like this message, comment on it, and share it. You are not just helping it spread. You are anchoring yourself to what God spoke. Engagement becomes remembrance. It reminds your spirit, this mattered to me. This changed me. If this message has been guiding you, subscribe to this channel and stay connected. Not casually, but intentionally. Let truth remain in your environment so alignment stays familiar. And if you know someone who is drifting, share this with them. You may be the interruption God uses to protect them. Archangel Michael also reveals that your words will carry more authority now. Authority increases when alignment is consistent. But authority can be diluted when speech becomes careless. God says guard your mouth in this season. Speak less when unsure. Speak clearly when instructed. Another truth is revealed here. God says you do not need to chase confirmation anymore. Alignment has matured to the point where peace is your signal. When peace lifts, pause. When peace stays, proceed. His simplicity will protect you from overthinking. There will be moments where you are tempted to rush decisions because things feel good. Archangel Michael says do not confuse momentum with permission. Always check alignment before moving forward, even when things seem obvious. God is also teaching you patience in success. Waiting is not only for hardship. Waiting during success keeps you grounded. Let results settle before expanding. Let fruit mature before harvesting. Heaven honors measured growth. Another area God addresses now is rest. Rest is no longer recovery. It is maintenance. When alignment is steady, rest keeps you sharp, not lazy. God says stop feeling guilty for resting when obedience is intact. Rest becomes worship when alignment is secure. As this part nears its close, Archangel Michael reminds you that remembrance is a choice. You choose what stays vivid in your spirit. Keep this moment vivid. Keep the warning alive. Keep the correction close. Not to fear loss, but to honor grace. If you are still listening, this is not accidental. This is where many would have mentally checked out, but you stayed. That itself is evidence of readiness. Hold on, because what comes next brings the final seal, the final blessing, and the final instruction that ties everything together in a way that will stay with you long after this message ends. Beloved one, as this message approaches its final unfolding, Archangel Michael now speaks with a calm authority that settles rather than stirs. God says this part is about integration. Everything you have heard so far was not meant to remain as information, emotion, or inspiration. It was meant to become part of how you live, decide, and respond when no one is reminding you. There is a sacred transition happening now. You are moving from being corrected to being entrusted. Correction realigns, but trust empowers. God says He does not keep warning those He does not intend to trust. The very fact that heaven interrupted you, instructed you, and walked you step by step reveals God's confidence in your capacity to steward what He gives. Archangel Michael reveals that the blessing attached to your name is now stabilizing. It is no longer hovering. It is no longer waiting on conditions. It is settling into place because alignment has become consistent rather than occasional. Heaven responds when obedience stops being emotional and becomes habitual. You may notice that your reactions are different now. Things that once triggered anxiety no longer shake you the same way. Situations that once demanded immediate answers now invite patience. This is not numbness. This is authority forming quietly. God says one of the clearest signs of maturity is when urgency no longer controls you. You move when instructed, not when pressured. That shift protects everything you have gained. Archangel Michael also addresses your identity. For a long time, you saw yourself as someone waiting for breakthrough. God says that label no longer fits. You are now someone maintaining breakthrough. That requires a different mindset. Breakthrough seekers look for openings. Stewards guard what has opened. This is why God has been teaching you restraint, remembrance, and consistency. These are not restrictions, they are reinforcements. They keep what God releases from leaking out through old habits. There is also a word here about legacy. God says the choices you make from this point forward will echo longer than you realize. Not because you are striving to be significant, but because alignment multiplies impact naturally. When your life is ordered, others find order through you. Archangel Michael reassures you that you do not need to announce this season. Let fruit speak. Let consistency testify. Heaven promotes quietly before it promotes visibly. Another truth is revealed now. God says there will still be challenges. Alignment does not remove resistance. It removes confusion. You will face moments that test endurance, but you will no longer question direction. Knowing where you are going makes endurance possible. You may also feel a renewed desire for simplicity. Fewer explanations. Fewer distractions. More depth. God says honor that desire. It is a sign that your spirit values quality over noise. Archangel Michael speaks about prayer one last time here. God says prayer will now feel less like effort and more like conversation. Less like pleading and more like listening. That is the fruit of alignment. When you are ordered, communication flows naturally. There is also a gentle instruction here. Do not rush to help others fix what God is still teaching you to steward. Share wisdom when invited, not when eager. Let humility pace your influence. God says something important now. You are no longer in danger of missing what He prepared. That warning has served its purpose. You responded. You adjusted. You stayed. Now the focus shifts from rescue to relationship. As this message nears its final ceiling, take a moment internally to acknowledge what has changed. You may not feel dramatic emotion, but you should sense stability. That stability is the evidence of alignment settling in. Archangel Michael stands guard over what has been released. What heaven establishes, hell cannot revoke when alignment remains intact. Remain attentive for just a little longer. The final words carry a blessing, a seal, and a command that completes this entire message. Do not disengage now. This is where everything comes together. My beloved child, this is the sealing moment. Archangel Michael now stands not as a messenger of warning or instruction, but as a witness. God says everything that needed to be said hath been released, and everything that needed to be corrected hath been adjusted. This final word is not about urgency anymore. It is about covenant awareness. You are not leaving this message the same way you entered it. Heaven records moments like this, not because God needs proof, but because alignment creates markers in the spirit. This was a marker, a turning point where awareness replaced delay, and obedience replaced hesitation. Archangel Michael declares that what was once fragile has now been fortified, not by striving, but by agreement. God says the blessing tied to your name is no longer at risk of being revoked, because you are no longer unaware. Awareness protects what ignorance endangers. You saw. You listened. You stayed. That matters more than you realize. From this day forward, you will notice a difference in how you approach decisions. You will no longer ask, "Is this safe?" Reversed. You will ask, "Is this aligned?" That question alone will save you years of unnecessary detours. God says alignment will now act as an internal compass for you. Archangel Michael speaks of peace settling over areas that once felt unstable. Not because everything is perfect, but because order has returned. When order returns, anxiety loses its authority. Confusion no longer dominates. Fear no longer negotiates. There is also a release happening now. God says guilt from past delays is lifted. Shame has no assignment in your future. Correction has already done its work. From here on, conviction will guide, not condemn. That is the difference between bondage and freedom. You are stepping into a season where obedience feels lighter, not heavier. That does not mean there will be no cost. It means the cost will make sense. You will no longer obey blindly, you will obey knowingly. Archangel Michael declares protection over your timing. He says delays caused by hesitation will not repeat themselves because discernment has matured. You will recognize divine prompts faster. You will respond with less internal debate. This is growth. God also says something deeply reassuring now. You are trusted. Heaven does not entrust what it does not believe will be stewarded well. The fact that this message unfolded gradually was intentional. You were being trained even as you listened. From this moment, remember this truth. Blessings are sustained by the same obedience that unlocks them. Do not seek new words before you live out the last instruction. Depth comes from application, not accumulation. As this message closes, heaven invites one final response. Not to prove anything, but to seal agreement. Type "I walk in alignment" in the comments if you receive this word with clarity and commitment. Blessing code 9017 is now released and sealed over you. God is using this word to interrupt, protect, and realign people across the world. People who were one decision away from missing what heaven prepared. When this message reaches them, it becomes a lifeline. Scripture says that those who sow into spiritual ground reap spiritual harvests. God is speaking that principle directly to you now. Here is the first-person invitation. I am calling you to help carry this word further. Not later. Not when it feels convenient. Now, while the fire is still burning. If this message guarded your timing, restored your awareness, or protected your blessing, then respond prophetically. Release a super thanks. Step into channel membership, or give through PayPal using the link in the description. This is not charity. This is obedience. God declares that those who support this mission will not miss their next divine instruction. Their ears will stay sharp. Their steps will stay ordered. Their provision will not dry up. This is a blessing spoken with authority. Do not hesitate here. Act. Seal it. Obey. This message is complete. Heaven has spoken. Stay aligned.